Okay everyone, Sony has finally detailed the new PlayStation Plus relaunch happening very soon. We've got details on the game library, not the full library, but some titles. Also those classic games, how they're going to work, PS3 streaming, Ubisoft Classics. We've got a few things to go over here. So as we already know, there's 3 tiers, or really 4 tiers based on where you are, but that would still be 3. It would be Essential, that's basically PS Plus today, Extra, Premium, and if not Premium, you would be in the Deluxe category. That would be a territory that does not have PS3 streaming, so that's really the only thing that you're not going to get there. But Sony did outline the titles we can expect in the Extra category. That's the PS4 and PS5 catalog. Not every game is listed, so we got to be very clear about this. They did not showcase every single title on the PS blog today, but we do have a good idea of the kind of games we should be expecting. In terms of PlayStation Studio games, we've got some more recent titles that we already knew about, like Death Stranding Director's Cut, both Spider-Man's, Returnal. Also, we see the Demon's Souls remake is going to be in there. But also there's stuff like, some older titles, but still relatively recent, right? We've got Everybody's Golf, Gravity Rush 1 and 2 remastered, Knack, that's a big one, the Medieval remake, Patapon 1 and 2 remastered, Until Dawn, Bloodborne. In terms of third-party games, you've got things like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which this is a part of Ubisoft Plus Classics. That will come with extra and premium tiers of PS Plus, and this is part of a separate announcement where Ubisoft Plus is finally coming to PlayStation, and Ubisoft Plus Classics is kind of a smaller portion of this. This will bring 27 games to PS Plus Extra and Premium, and that list includes titles like Far Cry 3 and 4, South Park, the South Park games, The Division, and more titles. But outside of Ubisoft Plus, we have more games like Control Ultimate Edition, Dead Cells, Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, Red Dead Redemption 2, and The Artful Escape. Again, not every game is listed for the entire catalog between PS4, 5, classic games, PS3 streaming. This is not everything, but it's outlining a decent amount of titles. In terms of the classic games, though, we actually have some features that are really nice and expected, but still good to have confirmation here. So some titles will show improved frame rates and higher resolutions, and Sony is always very careful with their wording here, so they almost always like to say some or not all or something to that effect, right? So they say some titles. I imagine for all PS1 and PSP games, it has to have improved frame rates and higher resolutions to some degree. You can't just have those games looking the way they did on modern televisions today, but they do say some titles. Also, select PS1 and PSP games will have a new UI with menus that let you control the save states for that game and also utilize a rewind feature. Again, they say some titles. I imagine that's going to be nearly all of them or all of them outside of the PS2 games or possibly the PlayStation 3 streaming, which we'll talk about in a second here. But here's the really big thing. So if you previously purchased PS1 Classics or PSP games before, and I would presume they're talking about the OG PlayStation Store on PlayStation 3 or also PSP, the PSP storefront, or PS Vita for the PSP games, your purchase is still honored here, so you can download those games for free outside of PS Plus. And Sony does say that some titles will also be available for individual purchase, and this might simply imply that the PS3 titles cannot be bought. So again, they're very careful with their wording here. They do say some titles. That might just mean that you can't buy the PS3 access to PS3 streaming, which is normal. That's always been the case for PlayStation Now games, or PS3 games on PS Now, I should say. But again, they're still very careful with that wording. But classic games, this includes things like Ape Escape, Hot Shots Golf, Intelligent Cube, Jumping Flash, Siphon Filter, Super Stardust Portable. Third party, we saw some of these games already: Mr. Driller, Tekken 2, Worms World Party, and Worms Armageddon. Now, it's really strange just how they're phrasing the PlayStation 2 stuff, right? Because that was all PS1 and PSP games, but they're calling this section of the classic games catalog the remasters, and this is actually where they're including some PlayStation 2 stuff, because these are actually all the PS2 emulated games on PS4, that program from 2016. So technically these are labeled and title ID'd as PS4 games, but you've got, what we've had previously. So things like Ape Escape 2, both Dark Clouds, Fanavision, the Jack games. We've had these games before, right? You might already own them because you can purchase those separately, and these are the premium PS2 games that have trophy support. And mind you, they've mentioned trophy support for, they haven't mentioned trophy support for any of these games. We know these ones do have it, though. And also in this classic games catalog remasters subsection, they're also including well, more recent games, but they're still considered remasters, right? So Bioshock Remastered, Borderlands, the Handsome Collection, also Kingdoms of Amalur: Re-Reckoning. So pretty interesting how they're phrasing it there. We don't actually have a brand new PS2 game outside of those PS2 emulated titles on PS4, at least for right now. Now, in terms of the PS3 games via streaming, this is something where it looks pretty much the same as well. In fact, the only thing that I notice here is Demon's Souls for PS3, the original Demon's Souls. That one's going to be available on the new PS Plus relaunch, and as far as I remember, it's not on PS Plus right now, or PS Now, I should say. I just checked, it's not on there. I'm not sure if it was on there before, but every other game, I think this is still on the main catalog. And again, we don't have the entire full lineup here, so there might be games that they're removing, there might be games that they're adding, but at least what they're willing to show right now on the PS blog, these are all currently on, except I think Demon's Souls, but somebody can correct me if I'm wrong here. Time-limited trials, we knew this was coming as well, so you've got a 2-hour trial for most games, and this is a pretty small list that they outlined here. Uncharted: The Legacy of Thieves Collection on PS5, Horizon Forbidden West, Cyberpunk 2077, Tiny Tina's Wonderland. You can play these games for 2 hours, and the timer does not start until you're actually playing the games. That's good. That was still really weird when they initially introduced the game trial feature, and it started at the point of download, and they made it 5 to 6 hours to account for the download. That was really strange, but at least that's fixed now. And in terms of when they're actually going to add games on a regular basis, PS Plus Essential, which is what we have today, that's not changing. So every month, the first Tuesday of that month, they're going to be announcing new PS Plus games, which we don't have the Tuesday lineup just yet, but that's going to pretty much remain unchanged. For PS Plus Extra, Premium, and Deluxe, that's something where it's going to refresh every month in the middle of the month is how they're phrasing it, and they do note here that the number of games refreshed every month will vary, so we don't have any sort of expectation about how many games will get added or removed every month. We'll find out over time, but essentially that's all we have right now. So it's honestly, I would say this is pretty good, exceeding my expectations, but I set my expectations accordingly because with Sony, you know, they do very Sony moves, and at least for the classic games, which is certainly going to be an interesting topic here, that was one where I was expecting at the bare minimum, just obviously something to improve the resolution. Wasn't sure about even something like frame rate, right? You would hope, but I was expecting kind of the bare minimum here. So to see improved frame rate, resolution, save states, and rewind, that is big. Arguably the biggest thing here is that if you do have some of these titles previously purchased from PlayStation 3, PSP, PS Vita, and you're still granted that purchase on your PS4, your PS5, that is really big. That is definitely something where, you know, nowadays where Sony is so careful about their bottom line, that's great to see. I'm very happy to see that. And also the confirmation that, yes, there will be some individual, you can individually purchase games. They're still very careful with their wording here. I imagine that includes most, if not all, those games that are outside of PlayStation 3 streaming. But in terms of the PS2 titles, yeah, definitely a little weird here that we don't have any brand new PS2 games just yet. So the only thing that we do have are those PS2 emulated titles from the PlayStation 4 cycle. And this kind of goes into the one thing I'm seeing immediately, and I know it's a big question for many. Are there going to be trophies for the PS1 and PS1, or the PS1 and PSP Classics? Now, I talked about this in a prior Let's Talk PlayStation whenever this news was just coming out or whatever, but as I've cautioned back then, I will caution it again. Do not expect trophies for these games. I mean, the thing is, if they were here, they would have outlined that right next to the save states and the rewind feature, which is admittedly pretty big, right? That's huge. So to not outline immediately that, hey, there's also trophies for these games, even just saying, you know, trophy support for some PS1, PSP games, right? It's just, don't expect it. And as I've mentioned in that LTPS, you can't keep bringing up this patent that Sony filed in. And I know people like to link the IGN article where it was like, that IGN article was from 2020 or something. It was very recent, but that patent is not recent. We have to, when we see articles about patents, we have to actually click the patent, check the related patents or the patent history. It goes back to 2016 or something, even further. I think actually the most original one is from 2012 or 2013, and that patent is what they use today, or rather I should say what they did use for those PS2 games on PS4. The way that patent works, the way that Sony adds trophy support to those PS2 games is that they're reading the save file information, they're actually using visual indicators on that particular game. So if something, if you beat a mission or whatever and it says you've completed mission 1, it could, read the screen and understand that, oh, okay, that's a trophy trigger, because obviously you can't support trophies via the underlying code, right? You're trying to not touch these games at all, and you're just emulating them. So that's how that works. They've had this for a while, so that patent is not new. And yes, Sony mandates trophies. It's something where they've mandated trophies since 2008, but as I've mentioned before, it's their own mandate. Clearly, they can remove their own mandate in the interest of getting more games on the service, which is what we saw during the PlayStation 3 cycle. They were mandated in 2008. PS1 Classics continued to be released on the PlayStation Store. They don't have trophies. So I would imagine they're not going to be here. They actually take much longer to add than one would think, and that's why that PS2 program on PlayStation 4 was rather short-lived. It was Sony was actually quite candid about that. That's why they charged money for them, and that's why it also took anywhere from 2 to 3 months per game to get them on the service. So I would imagine there's just far too many titles. It's just not reasonably worth it. That's my case on it. If they come out and confirm it, I will be happy, but I would still caution right now, don't expect trophy support for those games. With that said, though, I think this is an excellent foundation, right? So if I haven't said it enough, this is not all the titles, but what we're seeing at a glance looks encouraging, right? And this is kind of what I was getting at before with whatever the lineup is. I'm sure it's going to be heavily scrutinized, and I'm already seeing that, and that's okay. That's fine, right? Obviously, we want to criticize when it's appropriate or necessary. What matters is how this service evolves over time, right? The availability of these games, if they keep adding more titles, if it gets to a point where there's so many games added on an indefinite basis, you feel more confident knowing that you can subscribe at any point and you have access to possibly over 1,000 games, which they're not outlining over 1,000 just yet. That's still been the one stipulation and caveat that we're wondering here, is that are we losing games compared to what we have right now between PS Plus and PlayStation Now? That's still kind of a question mark, but it really depends on what they do over time. If they keep increasing the value proposition, if they add more benefits, if they include more quality titles, of course they can move on to things outside of games, like adding Crunchyroll or some sort of reduced cost for Crunchyroll. You could have, of course, expand the PS3 streaming, greatly improve the PS3 streaming if we're only going to get PS3 streaming, which, I've made my case there for years about why it's going to stay streaming for the time being. Also, PlayStation 5 server blades. So granted, nobody wants to stream games, but eventually they have to do something there where they have to, deploy some PS5 server blades so you can either download or stream PS5 games, and thus those PS5 server blades can replace the PS4 ones because they can play PS4 titles. That seems sort of like a natural expectation eventually. So there's work to be done, right? But so far, I would say just off this PS blog post, I'm feeling a lot better about it. I guess it matters more just over time how they will deliver on that month-by-month basis. We will see. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you found this useful and informative. And, once the relaunch happens, then we'll do some coverage. We'll check it out, play games, test out the features, all that stuff. And, we'll do all that when PS Plus actually does properly relaunch, which is very soon. Also, if you haven't just yet, please consider subscribing for the best PlayStation news, reviews, and updates that are here on YouTube. You can also follow me on Twitter at Mystic Ryan, and that is it. I will see you all in my next video. You take it easy.